Hello everyone, I am Professor Paul Carrier and I'd like to cover the topic of consideration uh, at this time. As you recall, we are currently studying contract formation with its full discussion of the third element, consideration. And what we talked about there was what it is. It's that quid pro quo. What things can constitute consideration? It could be a return promise. It could be actual performance, for example, following a unilateral offer. It could be money. It could be some kind of intangible like a stock certificate. Uh, it could be forbearance, giving up a legal right. And so there are quite a few things that can constitute consideration. And so ordinarily, if we see something on one side being transferred and it's desired, and don't forget, Floridians, that I may give up money for you to undertake a detriment. Don't smoke or drink this term while you're studying for contracts. That not smoking or drinking doesn't specifically aid me. It's not like I grab that. I don't get healthier because you're healthier, okay? But if I have bargained for that of you and you do give it up freely, then that would be considered your bargain, your thing you're giving to me. Your quid pro quo is giving up drinking and smoking. My quid pro quo is handing you the money if you've done it for the appropriate period of time, okay? Anyway, back to today. Last time we covered the quid pro quo, what it is. We talked about how courts ordinarily take a quick look at legal sufficiency. If it's a soda for $3 or $2, both of them are legally sufficient and they actually match in value. So we don't have to go into the question of adequacy. But sometimes you might have a tennis ball and it's quite legally sufficient on its side for $2 or $3 on the other side. But what if the other side is $1 million mansion? Tennis ball, not gold, $1 million mansion. You see a disconnect. So under the right facts, there would be legal sufficiency. It's a proper quid pro quo. But with other facts, something is going on and it's fishy and you know it. That's when courts will go into the question of adequacy. Okay? Not to say that if there's a large disparity in values, it is per se or automatically wrong, not consideration. Sometimes it is. Good example is glass of water for $5 in the hallway when I'm thirsty versus what if I gave you $1 million for that glass of water in the hallway, standing next to a water cooler? Okay, so maybe I'm in a hurry and I need that water, $5 for the convenience, okay. But what if I gave you $1 million for that water? There's a problem. Unless perhaps I was in the advanced stages of renal failure, kidney failure, for the failure to have liquids. And this water might just save my life before the paramedics arrive. Then $1 million for that glass of water might actually work and under the circumstances be considered adequate. But don't forget though, there's the sufficiency question, which is usually answered in the affirmative and courts stop the inquiry. But if things are somewhat disparate, courts then can look into the adequacy question. Okay? What we're doing this week is to talk about things that are not consideration, generally. Okay? Let's see. And the week following, we'll talk about consideration substitutes. That's where one side is missing some kind of consideration for some reason, but the law has found a way over time to fill that hole, to create a fake consideration to hold the deal together. Okay, rather than say, that's not consideration, it fails, we can say, that's not really consideration in that side, but because of this reason, we're going to throw this in and call it consideration as a consideration substitute. That should become more clear next week. Okay? First, illusory promises. If I promise to buy your guitar, if I want to, I have maintained all control over whether or not I buy. In other words, I don't have any skin in the game if I don't want to, at my choice. Okay? And so that is not legally sufficient consideration. It's illusory. And you'd be surprised at how often that happens. Somebody on the other side of a contractual arrangement or relationship, party of the first part, comfortable that a deal's going to happen, don't worry, without actually binding him, her, or itself. Sounds good, but not really binding. And if that's the case, then the other side, whose promise or whose activity is illusory, will be found not to have given valid consideration, and there would be no contract formation, and that person would not be able to enforce the contract against the party who is actually ponying up consideration on the other side. So illusory promises don't work. One trick, and I think that you'll find it in the materials, and it's covered in a restatement. What if you make a promise with three options? Like, I will buy your guitar for $500. Well, that's not the good example. How about if I said, I will, for your vehicle, I will either give you $5,000, I will give you my 2 motorcycles, or I'll promise to pay you in cash in a year if I still have a job and have enough money in my bank account to give it to you. Do you see that last one is basically bogus, right? That's illusory. Well, if I get to choose which one of those I'm giving you, I'll probably choose that last one. And therefore, all of them are treated as illusory, and my whole side of the bargain fails. Okay? Now, if I said each one, a car, 2 motorcycles, or a mortgage on my home, something, or promise to put a lien on my house, something like that, that's legally enforceable. If all the options that are possible would be consideration of themselves, then that multitudinous offer of consideration with a choice between would not fail as illusory, because no matter which one is picked, each one of those, when picked, would have appropriate value. Okay? Here's another trick, and this is the one I like best. What if we do the option? And we say, okay, I'll take your guitar, and I'll either pay you $300, or I'll give you my bass guitar, or I'll hire you at my company if I set up a company by next year, and I'll pay you an ungodly amount of money as a salary for almost nothing. That last one allows, see how it's like that job thing? Well, what if you're the person who gets to pick the options? You can pick the first one, the money. You can pick the second one, the bass guitar, and you can avoid picking the third one. So that one is a non-player if you are the party who gets to pick the option. But if I give options and one is illusory and I am the one who selects that option, then the whole thing falls apart. All of them are treated as illusory. Okay? A pre-existing legal duty. If you've promised to do something for me in a contract already, and you come back and complain you need more money, I can pretend like, I'll give you more money, oh, don't worry, $500 more. I wouldn't have to pay that. Okay? Reason why? You already have a duty to do it for what I'm paying you already. You have a pre-existing legal duty. Okay? And you're not allowed to ask for more. And I'll lie to you and pretend like I'll do that. But you will be forced to honor the contract originally. Now, if that is you, if that's how you roll, what you want to do to make sure that there's consideration is add something different. You come to me and say, I need $500 more to finish the project. And I say, oh, don't worry, it's not a pre-existing legal duty problem, and I'll be happy to pay it, but you can tell it's not quite right. Change the deal. Say, well, you're agreeing to give me $500 more. I'll finish a week early. Now, that $500 is backed up by being done a week earlier, which you didn't, excuse me, sorry, have to do. That extra now preserves the new deal. Both sides have consideration on each side. But keep in mind the pre-existing duty idea. Casebook examples often include sailors. They mutiny in the middle of the high seas, and then they ask for more money, and the captain usually says yes. When he gets back, he doesn't have to pay them anymore, because they had a pre-existing legal duty to do the job for what they were paid in the original contract. Okay, past consideration. If something is already done and not owed, gone, utilized, then it is not valid consideration. And a little later, maybe I can get to an example. If not now, I'll certainly get to one in class. Okay? Moral obligations tend not to be binding because they're not legal obligations, they're moral obligations. Best example is, and I think I mentioned this a little bit earlier, love and affection. If I promise to give you my house in a contract and you give in return love and affection until I die, as a family member particularly, but not necessarily exclusively, you're supposed to do that anyway. Okay, so that's really more of a gift. And so love and affection in virtually all cases would not constitute legally sufficient consideration. Okay? There are certain exceptions that fit under moral obligations, and one is if there's a past duty that is discharged. I owed you money, but the statute of limitations won't let you sue me anymore. I owed you money, but bankruptcy discharged me, so I don't owe you anymore, legally. What if I see you a month after that happened, the discharge, and then I feel bad and I promise you I'll pay it? Ooh, now the law, I think in all jurisdictions in this country, now recognizes if you open your mouth and you promise to make some kind of a payment that had already been legally discharged, it is renewed. So you feel bad and you say, oh, Ed, I'm sorry, I went bankrupt, I'll pay you. Let me just get a couple of months, let me get back on my feet and I'll pay you. That resurrects the entire debt. Okay? What if I say, I know it's $10,000, I discharged in bankruptcy, but you know, I feel so bad, I've got $2,000, I'll give you $2,000. I can resurrect it up to the amount stated. So if I state how much, that quote-unquote moral obligation responding to a previously legally discharged obligation renews up to that amount. If I say I'll pay it and I don't mention the amount, it presumes the entire amount. Okay, so there's some moral example questions. Moral obligation, one that doesn't work, love and affection, and one that does work, promise to pay a legally discharged duty when you never had to say anything or make that kind of a promise. Okay? Well, those are the main points to be covered today. And we'll be doing examples in class, not today, but in class, with illusory promises, pre-existing legal duties, past consideration, and moral obligations.